State Congress voted to ban abortion. Alternate universe located.
Global temperatures rise.
The effects on social media on Generation Z.
To avoid catastrophe, rising sea levels, and dying coral reefs, the epicenter of a global pandemic.
No exception for rape or incest.
So, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 3 of Energy Efficiency First. It's a collaborative, live, 6-part series from COP30 with friends at the European Commission's Energy Directorate and the City Network, the Global Covenant of Mayors. I'm Nick Nuttall, and I'm your host. Buildings are often described as energy hogs, which means pigs for those that don't know. But we can change that. If we're going to achieve the doubling of improvements of energy efficiency in Europe and around the globe, we need to turn our homes, our offices and our factories into beacons of energy savings in terms of equipment, materials and their operation. This is about, in part, renovating older buildings at scale, but also ensuring that new buildings, wherever they are, meet ever higher standards. It's about smart appliances. It's about energy-saving heating systems. It's about digitalization. It's about so much more. To discuss this, we have 2 expert guests and 3 representatives of inspiring energy-efficient pilots under the umbrella of the European Union's Horizon and Life programs. First up, we have Cristina Gamboa. She's the CEO of the World Green Building Council. And Cristina, just briefly tell us, what is the World Green Building Council?
Hi, Nick.
Hi.
The World Green Building Council is one of the largest and most influential global networks. We have green building councils in over 85 countries, and we aim to mobilize their 53,000 companies to accelerate this transition and to ensure that the built environment is that critical demand lever to make sure that the energy transition happens, but we also improve the quality of the built environment worldwide.
Very, very interesting. Thanks. So, we know that emissions from the built environment have been globally rather pretty stubbornly, 38% of carbon dioxide emissions, something like that?
Yeah, they're currently at 34%, but roughly they've
gone down
reduced
a little bit.
Yeah,
okay, that's good news.
The trend has started to shift.
Okay, but where do you see the change happening? How can we become more energy efficient in terms of the buildings?
I think the change is happening. The investment is happening alongside with the investment of the clean energy, the investment into all electric buildings and making sure that also they are as efficient as can be. It is happening at different rates and scales and speeds. But in a way, it's encouraging because the world is already, let's say, at a minus 34% with the built environment demanding so much energy and being inefficient. So the transition is happening, for example, through pairing, making sure that the buildings are integrating renewables, making sure that they are part of the energy system. There's innovations in local energy grids, and importantly, the energy efficiency part, which is making sure we don't waste the energy. And that goes through good ventilation, good insulation, good comfort for people, and empowering citizens to understand their energy consumption and make sure that we are driving forward a more systemic change that can bend the curve.
I talked to the Director General of Energy at the European Commission a couple of days ago, a recorded interview which I think is going out maybe tomorrow, and she was very confident that Europe will triple renewable energy investments. The energy efficiency is a bit more of a challenge. I think it's something to do with the higher upfront costs, perhaps. And, is that a similar story, not just in Europe, but worldwide?
Yes, in a way. There's like two stories, Nick. One is like the developed countries, where in Europe, for example, 75% of the buildings that will stand by 2050 are energy inefficient today. So the retrofit challenge has to scale up in, for example, in Europe, in order for Europe to meet its own climate goals of climate neutrality. In other regions of the world, for example, where COP30 is around all electric and efficient cooling, right? And making sure that people can also thrive in spite of being resilient. So changes a little, but Europe in particular, as I think going into a more success rate, is kind of in terms of the alignment, policy regulation, and the investments that are happening are more the right direction. Countries still need to build at a high rate. The statistic, which is key, is that 50% will double the stock building by 50% by 50.
Wow.
So, and in region Asia and Africa, that's where it's going to happen.
Right.
So
that's new buildings where we need to make sure that the high standard.
Decarbonizing Europe and other countries, we have to ensure the developed world can frog and make things better, not make the mistakes.
Yeah. Super. Let's go to our guest on the Magic Zoom. It's and Rob, I do hope I pronounce the last name. Is it Nuij? Nuij? Can I have some volume ease here on Robert, because I'm not getting him right now. Yeah. Super. You're with the European Commission Secretary General for Energy, Directorate General, and Robert is the head of unit with responsibilities for energy efficiency of buildings and products. Robert, how is the Commission and the EU dealing with the stepping up of energy efficiency through the lens of renovations and or also energy efficiency in new buildings? Tell us a little bit about what the plan is.
Well, hoping that you can hear me very well.
Yes, we can hear you, Robert. That's lovely.
Excellent. So, as was already mentioned, the focus in the EU is very much on the renovation of the existing building stock. We have, since many years already, stringent or more stringent requirements for new build. So we hope that we have covered that, but it's really about the existing building stock, which will be standing, as was mentioned. And there we are focusing very much on driving member states to, first of all, plan renovation. I mean, this is not something that happens overnight. So it's a long-term planning exercise. We are asking them to come forward with national building renovation plans that puts in place this long-term planning and also includes measures, for example, for finance. Renovation or the replacement, for example, of heating systems. And there we are, for example, promoting one-stop shops that can help households to find that information. We're working on skills because we see that in particular for installers, there is a lack of skills in the European Union in that context. And finally, we're also looking at financing. So we're providing financing both at European level, but also through the member states to, for example, give subsidies to people who want to replace their boiler. But also to make sure that there is more private sector financing going into the renovation sector.
Very good, Robert. And you know, part of the reason we're doing this series with you guys at the Commission and the Global Covenant of Mayors is to try and just illuminate, in a sense, this rich array, very rich array of horizon and which kind of innovation projects and the environment programs like LIFE to show how they're kind of piloting new energy efficiency approaches in this area. They're an important part of this story, aren't they, in a sense, because they're bringing creativity, new ideas and innovation to this whole area.
I think they are an essential part of the story. I mean, of course, one thing that we can do at European level is come forward with regulations and provide some money and things like that. But where the real change happens is on the ground. And that is where these projects make a real difference. They bring people together, they deploy new technologies, they create really community around some of these projects. And that is what will really make the change on the ground. So we will focus very much on providing boundary conditions, if I can say so, but then these projects really drive change on the ground, so they're essential.
Super, Robert. Well, stay with us. Yeah, we'll move on now. We have correct. Okay. So Robert, we're just waiting a little bit for our friends to come in on the magic of Zoom, but let's come back to you, Robert. I mean, we've got this doubling of energy efficiency by 2030. This goal. It's a really tough target, right? I mean, the tripling of the renewable energy is fine, but the doubling is a bit tricky. Are you confident the EU can get there with that?
That we would say in the deployment of those technologies, and therefore I think I'm pretty confident that we can meet that target.
Okay. Okay, Robert. Okay, Robert. Okay, Robert. Okay, Robert. Okay, Robert. A little feedback there. Yes, that's lovely. We're now going to go, I think, to the other guests who are coming in on the magic of Zoom. We've got Sebastien Delpont, who's president and co-founder of Ressorts. They're working on a EU Live project called Life Giga Regio Factory. I don't know who comes up with these acronyms, but they're certainly fascinating. Sebastien, tell us, what is the Life Giga Regio Factory trying to achieve, and why is it important for decarbonizing renovations?
Movements named Energiesprong that mean that mainstreaming deep energy retrofit. With the thinking, we've organized industrial value chain to solve the problem at scale and make solutions for deep energy retrofit more affordable. So for sure, Regio, because solutions for 2017 are the one from Northern Denmark. I mean, there's a reality to climate to adapt history of architecture. But sometimes, during the 70s in Northern France, people will build the house all the same at the time. So when come now the time to organize retrofit, even if we have different landlords, and especially social housing landlords, that's nonsense that everyone would organize itself individually. As that was also mentioned by Robert, we're workforce issues. So faced to the problem, we're not retrofitting enough. There's two ways. Even we find miraculously, and we have to try that miracle to find 4 times more employee value chain, or we have solution where 4 times more prefab and off-site solution that quite convenient in that way. But then we have kind of a new science to develop, and that's what we help implementing through transnational cooperation, is science of aggregation of buildings. Is it worth organizing the retrofit of this building with this building with this building, depending on different characteristics? And also bear in mind that when it comes to deep energy retrofit using industrial method, it's not black and white. It's not this possible, this not possible. For sure, if you have weirdo architecture, it's complicated, but it's really on which building it's possible to very fast to do 60% of the retrofit for all the 40% of the retrofit for the 80%. And what we develop is open source tool to facilitate aggregations by different stakeholders. Of course, with big landlords, we have the capacity to change because we have one guy. It goes faster than convincing individually 1,000 families. So the idea to activate the market and along an industry for hydrogen, an industry for electric car battery, we need an industry for prefab facade, we need an industry for prefab items, we need industry for solution that we can pour at scale. So it's not a solution for all buildings, but if for 50 to 80% of the housing stocks, and it depends of history, heritage building presence, we have faster solution to scale that become more affordable. We solve a big part of the problem. And it's why to implement is how to support connection between the demand of the offer, sharing data, feedbacking, because it's not something that does not exist. We have delivered and have been stakeholders delivered to 20,000 industrial deep energy retrofit in Europe. So it's not yet to the scale of thousands and 100 million homes to be retrofitted at EU level almost. But yeah, it's better than nothing. So it's kind of early days of the industry. I mean, people don't dare to call it an industry yet, but definitely with a topic which is almost 40% of EU problem in matter of carbon, definitely there's a great and impelling perspective for such development.
Heads up, just stay with us right now. We have another wonderful guest, which is Inga Andresen. She's a professor at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology. Inga, you're involved in something called ARV. That's a Horizon project that's working on accelerating renovations through a circular economy approach. Inga, tell us about ARV, which I think means something like legacy in Norwegian. What is special about the approach here? And perhaps give us an example that you're very proud of.
It's actually, as you said. And a longer title for it is we are working with what we call climate positive circular communities. And we want to boost these, enable the wide scale deployment of these communities around Europe. So what we mean by climate positive circular communities, it is about and it is about creating positive energy buildings that are generating more energy than they need. And it's also about addressing circularity, especially with respect to material use. And lastly, it's about creating good communities where people can interact and live good low carbon lives together. So it's quite wide scale. It's a big project. We have 6 demonstration projects around Europe. We have one in Palma de Mallorca in the south. We have one in Trento in Italy. We have one in Utrecht in the Netherlands, one in Corina in Czechia, and one in Sønderborg in Oslo. And one in Oslo in Norway. Sønderborg is in Denmark. Sorry about that. And we have a lot of different innovations in this large project, ranging from small sensors in control systems via nature-based solutions, citizen engagement strategies, and business models. But since this talk is about energy, I would like to highlight one very beautiful social housing project that is being built in Palma de Mallorca. And this social housing project, it employs a perfect combination of old vernacular techniques and modern tools and expertise. And it's using mainly 3 strategies, I would say. The first one is to use locally sourced materials. They're using local sandstone, which is available on the island. They have an old industry. And they're using, for insulation, this is for construction, of course, and then for insulation, they are using seagrass that is washed up on the shore of the island. So it's available, and it's also induced with salt, so it can last for a long time. So by taking these old techniques into new methods, they're revitalizing also traditional local industries. So it has many good aspects about it. Then the second strategy that they are employing is that maximum potential. They're actually eliminating space heating, but also space cooling in a warm place like Palma de Mallorca, which can get over 35 or even 40 degrees in warm days. So having no cooling, actually energy for cooling, is really impressing in this place. And they're doing this by passive solutions, using this sandstone they're talking about to store energy with natural ventilation and design of the building and so on. And then lastly, they are using the vernacular elements in these, connecting to the sandstones and so on, to create very people-friendly architecture with a historical connection. So I think it's sort of a very nice mix of many different aspects, where people meets nature and beauty, and simplicity meets advanced modern strategies.
Very good. That was really interesting indeed. And I love the idea of using the seaweed and mixing with the sandstone as a local industry. Let's just turn to Simon Spoelstra, who's coordinator of Spirit. Now, Simon is based at the Netherlands Organization for Applied Scientific Research. Simon, almost all of the European industry still seems to rely on gas-powered boilers to produce heat. Needed to process everything from leather and alcohol to pharmaceuticals and foodstuffs. Gas boilers are really good because they work very nimbly and fast and they respond, except they just unfortunately produce greenhouse gas emissions. And also there's a lot of heat, which is often wasted in these factories. Spirit is about, I think, trying to use a new technology that can do what the gas boilers do, but without all the mess for our climate. Tell us a little bit about it, Simon.
Yeah, hi Nick, thanks for having me. Indeed, our project is about industry, not about buildings, but what we try to demonstrate within Spirit is to prove that you can make steam for industry with help of waste heat and electricity. So you can upgrade waste heat that is now released to the environment to usable steam levels. And steam is a very common energy carrier with industry. So if you can do that, then it's, you can avoid the use of fossil fuels for your gas boilers. We do this with 3 demonstrations throughout Europe. So we have 3 demo sites, one in Norway, one in Belgium, and one in the Czech Republic. And heat pump technology will be demonstrated there. Of course, heat pump technology is known. I mean, domestic, we just heard some examples of buildings. Of course, it's applied there, but for industry, we need much higher temperature levels to produce steam. And so the technology used there is very innovative and new, and it needs also to be proven. And that's why we do these demos at these sites. So, for example, we have one in Belgium at a sugar mill. Sugar is made by extracting sugar from a beet, and then it's dissolved in a lot of water. And you need to evaporate the water to get the sugar out. And they do this in a very efficient way, but in the end, they end up with heat they cannot use again. So we have a heat pump installed there from Gamboa. They will use this waste heat, we put electricity in via the compressor, and it makes steam that they can use again to dry, to evaporate the water from the thick juice, as they call it, to run into sugar. And these kind of systems, they can reduce energy, but like 50%. Also, the CO2 emissions are huge. If you use completely renewable electricity, you could even completely get rid of the CO2 emissions associated with the heat production.
Interesting. So these are all interesting projects, all slightly different in different areas. I mean, the first 2 really more about on the household level, Simon's work and the team's work of Spirit with more industrial emissions. I suppose one quick question to each of the guests really is, how do you imagine what you're doing will be scaled up in a way that the whole of Europe can actually benefit from what you've actually learned and what you've actually been doing? Maybe we could start first with our guest. Sorry, I'm just flipping down my script here, which is being very naughty. Sebastien, how is this? Why can't everybody in Europe, every town and city or whatever, have what you're working on, which is Life Gigio Regio Factory? Do we need one in every city? Have we got Sebastien back? Yes, Sebastien, you're with us again.
Yeah,
we're very lucky. How do we get one in every city in Europe? What can we do to make that happen?
I think what's interesting thing that scaled in the past years is something that promoted the EU Commission is development of a one-stop shop. It was recognized as something of great value and that every local authorities should be providing to individual owners advice on what they should do. And I think the next step of future is promoting the way we're done one-stop shop with this industrial aggregation team that we're helping, because we're here to kickstart better relationship and value change. For now, it's started in a few regions of Europe, but it's not reproduced yet at scale. So we're trying our best for different EU-funded projects, but it means maybe a perspective, EU-wide perspective of saying, guys, this is working some places, this needs to be scaled. With what is really in common public policy, classically in public policy, you have policy that support the offer, subsidies, or the demand, but rarely middlemen trying to connect the offer and the demand. And would you believe this is something very needed, a new kind of recipe for public policy? And having that being promoted more widely has I'm given today the opportunity of telling it, really will help to scale.
Sebastien. Inga, can I come to you? How do we scale up all these wonderful things that you guys are achieving with ARV?
Yeah, I would like to mention two. I think two, in addition to what Sebastien said, is important. I think we need a little bit better skills, so education and knowledge and skills, because you can use the old methods, but you need to use them in new ways. And digitalization, of course, have been mentioned earlier. So that's one thing that we are also working with from every site and university where I am. And then also, I think there are a cost issue, especially now that material costs have risen a lot in the last 5 years. We need to tackle the high upfront costs. They can't be cost efficient on the long run. They are cost efficient on the long run, but the high upfront cost is a barrier. So I think, and then to address this, I think we need both governmental and public funding, new business models, and combining the efforts for both public and private fundings.
And finally, let's go to Simon. Is it a similar story, Simon? This is about how do we deal with the higher upfront costs of something which over time would actually pay back very well, yeah?
Correct. We have a similar issue in industry. Also, industry struggling with the high initial upfront cost, so high capex, which will earn its back in time, but it will take a while. And industry is at the moment reluctant to invest in this. So I'm also curious to see what will happen with the Innovation Fund heat auction that will be launched in December, the European Innovation Fund. Whether there will be room for subsidy for industrial heat pumps. So I'm very curious on what the outcome of that auction fund will be.
Well, I must say to everybody, we had the European Investment Bank on the show earlier in the week on the 11th, and they seem to be stepping up quite a lot with new investments here. Let's see how far this goes, but there is something encouraging happening there. So anyway, thank you to everybody. We've run out of time. We've overrun out of time. I want to thank the three projects, Simon, Inga, and Sebastien, for being with us. Well done with your work. It's really important that we raise the profile of these projects to a wider audience. Robert, for being with us from the Commission. Thanks, Robert. That was really helpful. And Cristina Gamboa of the World Green Building Council had to run off because she had another event here in Belém, but it was great to have her too. Thanks very much. And I think we're going to now go to a recorded interview with Dan Jorgensen, the Energy and Housing Commissioner. The interview was conducted in Brussels by my colleague Katarina Rolfsdotter Jansen in the run-up to COP30 in Belém. So let's watch that. Thank you.